think it's doing it.
Let's see.
See, there I am rubbing my nose, talking about rubbing my nose. Hello? Can you all hear me? Is it working? Am I muted this time? I see no feedback.
It should take a second to register, I believe.
Okay. So do we just wait here until anybody maybe says something?
I think, Jake, are you on there?
I'm doing it right now.
Oh, okay.
We're up.
We're up. Is it working?
Yep. You're good.
Oh, I see someone says, I like that it's Darren. I'm pretty sure it's Zan.
It is.
Hi, Zan. Okay, hi, everybody. Welcome back to week 3 of the Yoo-Hoo for Teens webinar. And this week, I'm hoping to just do kind of a scatter shot over some topics that are covered in the book. And next week, I'm hoping to wrap up with body image as the final one. So this week, we will just be talking about a number of different things. So the big concept that I wanted to talk about, we talked about the first week also, which is it's essentially that ideas have consequences. So when you believe something fundamental, one of your fundamental beliefs, it can't help but have consequences in your life. That works its way out. So something that my dad often says when he's preaching is that your theology comes out your fingertips. And that's true if you know what it's true whether you're really conscious about it or not. It's just the way that it works. It's like it's sort of like your food provides your energy. That's just how it is, but it doesn't really matter whether or not you're super self-conscious about that. That's just what is happening. So given that ideas have consequences, there's something else that we can look at, which is sometimes the consequences have an idea behind them. So sometimes sometimes what happens is you'll have a problem in your life, or there's something that is not sitting right with you as a teenager. It may just be an area that you're really bothered that you're not allowed to do some things, or you really wish there's some recurring problem. Now, oftentimes, if you're having this problem, sometimes you can say, okay, well, I bet if I trace this back to what do I believe fundamentally, that you can sometimes find the bad idea back further upstream that is causing this particular consequence. So it's a good idea to try to think about those things a little bit deeper. Teenagers are likely to want to just write things off as like, this is just how it is. This is what it's like. People are always just really envious of their friends, you guys probably hear this among your friends, but I certainly hear it with grown women who just say things like that they struggle with FOMO, or they just state things like, I can't be on Instagram because then I just get consumed with jealousy about my friends' vacations. And they say that kind of thing as it's just a statement. It's like, this is the problem that they're having. But they're not even talking about it like it's a problem. And so what I often am wanting them to do is say, well, let's not just accept that. Let's say, what's the origin of this? And oftentimes in things like discontent or envy, the origin is something about, your problem that you're actually having with God is causing this problem out here. So if there's some problem that you have, like I would say, relating to a sibling, relating to a sister, if you have antagonism between siblings, or if you're really struggling with your mom or with your dad or with somebody, sometimes you need to stop and evaluate, what is the idea in my life? What have I accepted that's having this consequence? So last week we talked about authority, and as we talked about that authority, that would be an example. If you're having a lot of problems with your parents, or you're having a lot of problems with anytime someone is in charge of you, if you're bucking against that, you might need to look back and say, okay, what are the beliefs that I've accepted that I think are just true? What are the things that I'm accepting? I posted this today. Let me look at this. It was a dandruff shampoo bottle that says, cool, let me find it because I'm going to misquote it. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, it says question everything but yourself. Hashtag headstrong. And now this is the kind of thing that you maybe have seen this kind of thing on bumper stickers or on, it's like glib advice given in movies to other people, etc. It's like something you've heard a lot. Question everything but yourself. And you might not realize that you're accepting that kind of thing, but you have to pick it apart and say, okay, what is that statement? What is that statement actually saying? Because it's not saying, hey, God did not create you, reject him, right? It's not saying that. And I hope most Christian girls would see a statement like that and reject it. It's coming out a little bit more sneakily, right? It's coming at it from a different angle, and it's just sort of, it's assuming the fact that it says hashtag headstrong. So it's sort of trying to say that being headstrong is good. So they're using that in a positive way. So it's sort of like saying you want to be this kind of headstrong, and that somehow this good thing is wrapped up in this idea of questioning everything but yourself, which has to bring in something else, which is yourself is higher than God in this world, right? Because you should question God, just never question yourself. You should question the Bible, just never question you. You should question all of these things. And then it's all wrapped up with a bow that's sort of saying, this is what will make you a strong woman. This is what will make you a strong person. I don't know who that particular bottle of dandruff shampoo was marketing itself to. But that is the idea. There's actually ideas behind that. Now, I doubt most of you would look at the bottle of dandruff shampoo and be like, well, that's it. I'm going to go out there and argue with mom right now. But that kind of thing still seeps in. So that is, it's a logical fallacy of repetition is what it's called. It's the principle that is behind brainwashing. So if you're wanting to persuade someone, I'm assuming that you all have read Silver Chair. In the Silver Chair, where the witch is telling them over and over that there is no overland, there is no sun, there is no all of this, and it's that wonderful scene where Puddleglum stamps her little magic fire out. But that kind of moment where you're like losing track of reality because you just keep hearing this over and over and over. That's brainwashing. That's what happens, right? That's how it's done. So it's not a good argument. It's not even a clear argument. It's just repeated so many times that people can't, that they start to buy into it. So basically, I think it's funny because the world is so busy with this kind of thing all the time. So busy trying to give us this kind of propaganda about the self and about the nature of life and your strength and what is beauty and what are women for, and all. They're trying to tell you something all the time, but it's not something that we would all agree is true, because it's not. If it was self-evidently true, they have no reason to keep saying it over and over because we all already believe it. So the only reason for crazy amounts of repetition is typically that it's a weak argument. I think my dad also always quotes somebody who said, wrote in the margin of his sermon notes, argument weak, shout here, or something. And that's what the world is doing. It doesn't actually add up as a good argument. It doesn't hold together as a complete worldview, or it's not a happy way to live. It's not a fulfilled way to live. But they're shouting it at us all the time. So one thing that I was hoping to cover today is this idea between, if you're all growing up in Christian homes, there is a high likelihood that you disapprove of what the world offers you all the time. These invitations to be immoral, invitations to be rebellious, invitations to be immodest. All of you may disapprove of those things. Hopefully, if your parents have done a good job, you disapprove of them. You drive, I know, driving through the U of I campus, often we would drive past all the frats, and you see quite a scene of fraternity sorority life. That of course we do disapprove of what's happening there, but the important part is not that you just look down on it or disapprove of it, but that instead you should be really disenchanted with it. You should not think that that's a good life that you just are missing out on. So I guess the example that I would say is we talked about this the first week about, do you really believe that God created you? Do you really believe that he's actually in charge and that the world actually functions according to the way that he set it up to function? And in that, okay, so say the world is, there's a bunch of unbelieving teen girls who are living life according to the world's principles. It's like, I don't know, you're picturing their life as like a big chocolate cake, and you might be disapproving of what they're doing, that you're saying like, that's bad, they shouldn't be eating that, that's, that's bad, they shouldn't be. But there's also part of you that thinks, but that looks really good, that looks really delicious, I wish I could have some. But you're thinking, no, God says you're not allowed to have that chocolate cake. God says no about the chocolate cake. But at the same time, in your heart, you're thinking, I wish God didn't say no to that chocolate cake because I want to, because I wish I could be like one of those girls who's eating all that chocolate cake. Now, the idea behind when I was saying you want to be disenchanted with it is that what I want you to see is that chocolate cake is actually it's got like rats in it. It's disgusting. It's actually, it is absolutely hideous inside. It has horrible consequences. It's disgusting. And instead of all the Christian girls hanging around being like, oh, if only I could also eat that cake full of rats, I think, what I want you to see is that that's what it is, that this is not a good offering. And instead to be full of compassion for people who are stuck in this bad situation, right? Far too often there are Christian girls who regret the fact that they've been grown up in a protected environment. They regret the fact that their parents have kept them from a lot of these opportunities for sin, but they don't understand why, and they don't embrace the standard, because it's this idea that would have been good for me somehow. If I could have done that, it would have been fun. Or I would have enjoyed that experience, or I wish that I could do that, because what the world is telling you is that following your own heart, following your own lusts, following your own desires is the path to finding you, to finding who you are. Like they're saying, follow your heart. You've heard that a lot of times, haven't you? And it's just not a biblical principle. I think it's in Leviticus where it says, hold on, I'm going to look it up. Give me a hot second here while I look up this. It's talking about the stuff that they should have on their garments. Okay. It is, no, maybe not. Hold on. It's saying, do not, let's see, you not forget it. Okay. I should tell you all right now that I left my computer at home. I was halfway here when I was like, oh snap, I forgot it. Okay, let's see. Okay, it is Numbers, not Leviticus. I lied. It says, you will have these tassels to look at, so you will remember all the commands of the Lord, that you may obey them and not prostitute yourselves by chasing after the lusts of your own heart and eyes. That this is not, when the Bible talks about people following their heart, it does not talk about following your heart to a happy ending. It's this harlotry, the prostitution of your own heart, as that said, or the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined. And of course, in Jeremiah 1, it says, the heart is deceitful above all things, who can know it? And there is this biblical truth that our heart is not a good guide. And our heart, it will lead us astray. And then what the world is telling us all the time is follow your heart, and that this is the real truth. This is the ultimate, following your heart is how you really find out who you are. Like your heart is the great map, the road map to you. So it's what the Bible says. That idea has a consequence. If you believe that your own heart is deceitful, that it's leading you astray, then if you actually believe that, then the consequence of that idea is that you mistrust your own heart. You're not gonna say, oh, should I do this or should I not? Let me just check my heart. My heart's the wise one here. But if you believe that your heart is actually going to show you the way to your true self, then you end up just chasing your heart around all the time, right? And girls, you should know, I'm sure you do know by now, everybody should know, how fickle is your own heart? Like, how often is your heart changing its mind all of the time? It's a horrible God to serve, and it's a horrible, horrible guide in life. But what the world wants you to believe is that your heart is really, really what you need to follow. You need to follow your own lusts, your own impulses, your own ideas. So one reason that I think this is something that I think is interesting. Girls are targeted so much. Girls and women are targeted so much in this, in what is really popular to talk about in the world right now, and what we're pushing on everyone, and what the propaganda is. It is so often targeting women, which I think is really interesting. Except for because the targeting, what's the goal of all of it? What's the goal of all of the ideas behind reproductive control for women, like abortion and birth control and not having babies until you never wanted to have babies, and having you don't need a man, and you're going to have your career, and you're going to do this, and all of the things that the world is telling us over and over and over and over, that you can do whatever you want to do. Women are the same as men. We should have the same rights as men. All of the things that the world is pushing on you all the time does have a reason. It's not like when we always have in our Christian life this threefold opposition between the world, the flesh, and the devil, right? Those are the things that push against us all the time. And they're pushing off. Sometimes you think, why is this so coordinated? Why does it seem like the world and our flesh and the devil, everything is pushing us towards women being immoral? It's pushing us towards women letting down all of these standards of, like, I don't know, I'm sure you girls have seen some of this, that whatever a woman is wearing, it should be fine. No matter what you wear, you should be allowed to do anything you want, wear whatever you want, behave however you want. And that's freedom of expression. That's just what you should have. So the world, the flesh, and the devil are all pushing towards this idea that women really should be immoral. Women really should be free to be immoral all the time. And I think that what's really interesting about that push, and I know many of you are probably too young to have felt much of this, but you will at some point in your life. You will feel this push from the world. And the reason that I think the world is so focused on this is because Proverbs talks about what does an immoral woman do? What is the comparison between a moral woman and an immoral woman? Well, we have a moral woman, say maybe the Proverbs 31 woman, is building her house. She is building culture. She's building people up all around her. She is providing for people. She is protecting people. She's making good investments. She's doing all of these things. But what does the immoral woman do? And I think it's really interesting that the immoral woman leads simple men to hell. It's the immoral woman takes the whole, Jake, do you see somebody saying looks like they're having problems again? Something not working? It's still working for you? Little interlude there.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Jessica, I'm not sure what problem you're having, but I think it's working. Okay, so anyways, so the idea though is that an immoral woman is not just isolated by herself. The immoral woman is not like a woman is an integrator of all of culture and society. And so when the women of a society can be corrupted and made immoral, what they end up doing is leading tons of people with them to hell. It's a very strategic place to target. And so as Christian women and as Christian young women, what we really want to see from you all is a clear understanding that you are a strategic place that the enemy is wanting. Do you see this question, Jake? She's saying it hasn't started yet at 4:52. Maybe she's got to, well, she's here. She's got to have the right link. Okay, so anyways, the woman is like, we're in a strategic place. And why is it being so attacked? Because it's strategic. And so it's very important that you young girls don't just intake everything the world is telling you, that you don't start compromising, that you don't start making all of these dumb small steps away from the path of what Scripture has laid out for us, where we get confused, where we get off in the bushes of various things. You are a strategic target, and it is important for far more than just you in your life that you obey God, that you find your identity in Him, and that you be a really a place that the enemy can just not get. I'm glad you're here, Jessica. Sorry for whatever problems you were having. Okay, so that you're a strategic place, and it's really important for you, not just for your own life, not just because God rewards faithfulness, but because the church needs women who are not being really vulnerable to the things that the enemy is telling us. So one of the things for teen girls that I think is a real struggle. If you're growing up, I talked about this idea of looking at sin that other people are in and thinking that it looks fun, even though you're like, but God says I can't do that. Like, I wish I could, but God says I can't. And so obviously the goal is to have you be really disillusioned with the sin and think it's a dead end. It's unproductive. I don't want to go there. I have no desire to be eating that nasty cake. But one of the things that I think I just wanted to talk a little bit about with you guys today is the fact that it's very tempting to think that people who are in sin have so much more knowledge of the world, that you're like, I'm just really naive. I wish I knew what was happening in the world. I wish I had the understanding that they must have because they've been pursuing life outside of the church. They've been pursuing this. They've been pursuing their own lusts. They've been pursuing whatever they want to pursue. And this idea that makes them wise in some way. Well, in Hebrews 7, I believe it's Hebrews 7. Let me see here. It says that we have a high priest in Jesus who was tempted in all ways like us, and yet he did not sin. But it says that he has, hold on, I'm going to look it up so I don't misquote it. But we know, you all know, that Jesus did not sin, and he is our high priest. So the fact that it says, let's see, he was tempted in all ways like us, yet he did not sin. And then it says that therefore, hold on, scrolling through here, it says, Hebrews 7 is a long, I was going to say, it says that he has compassion for us, that he actually knows, let's see, I'm definitely in the right chapter because it's all about him being our high priest. But the let's see. Okay, but anyways, the point is, it does say it in there. You can read Hebrews 7 for yourselves. That he was tempted in all ways for us, and he has compassion for us. And so the thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is, if this is another illustration from my dad, say 50 people walk out in a crazy high wind. It's like hurricane level winds, and 49 of them blow over right away. They're just flat on their faces in the mud, and one person walks 5 miles in this crazy wind and gets to where they're going. So which out of all those 50 people, who knows the most about wind? Is it the people who were immediately blown over by it, or is it Jesus? In this illustration, Jesus is the one who does not fall into the sin, who walks the whole distance without without falling? Who knows more about it? And the flesh wants to tell us that I can't know about this unless I do it, unless I get involved in this. I can't have that knowledge. But the reality is that Jesus is the perfect. Sin does not make you wiser. The falling into sin always confuses, and it always adds things that are hard to see past. And it's like FOMO is fear of missing out. It's like if you I read a question and answered that. I like for someone who listens to that later, that was a spontaneous sentence. Okay, so the idea is every time you get into sin, you get a little bit more confused. If you aren't getting right back out of sin and confessing it, it's doing an error saying YouTube is not receiving enough video. Does it matter? Does that matter on this end? I'll just...
Should be good.
Okay. All right. I'll just ignore that. I'll just move straight along. So the idea is that sin always confuses. Sin does not ever clarify things. So there always is that idea that, well, maybe if I just sin a little bit and get back out of it, then I'll have this knowledge. I'll have this new idea of what's actually going on in the world. And the reality is that everything you need to know, you know in obedience. So everything that you need to know about how the world works, you know from faithfulness to Christ. At the same time, if you do sin and you repent immediately, it's still Jesus's perfect perfection that can redeem even your sin into a something that can be fruitful, like something that you're like, I learned about grace here, or I did this. And so I learned good things. It's not that God can't make that fruitful, but the idea that sin somehow reveals interesting things to us is simply false. So the idea that I'll just start compromising a little bit here and a little bit there, and then I'll understand the world a little bit better, and then I'll be wiser. It's this idea that you'll be a little bit wiser if you just experience more. But a big part of that comes to us from the world that says that your identity is found in following yourself. And because we're Christians, we believe our identity is found. It's the Westminster Confession of Faith, the first answer. It's what is the chief end of man? It's to glorify God and enjoy him forever. And so if what our created identity is to worship God, then in that relationship, that's how we find out who we are. That's how we really learn more about ourselves. So the world fundamentally says follow yourself, and Christians should fundamentally be saying follow your God, worship your God, and that the self is not an object, but the self is something that you find out about in your faithful worship of your God. So that's that. Okay, I want to go over a couple really super practical things, but I'll answer. Let's see. Can you talk about if I want to go to college and be a nurse, but also want to be a mom? What does that look like? I would say you can't know that now, what that would look like. What it has to look like is a whole bunch of faithful days in a row. So what you want to do, there's nothing wrong with pursuing. You're like, I'd like to be a nurse. Well, begin pursuing what you need to do about that. But recognize that any kind of big long-term trajectory in your life is made up of faithful days, and that whatever it is that you want to pursue, there will be an opportunity to pursue it in an ungodly way or to pursue it in a way that's really offering it to God. So what I would say is you have a general idea of what you would like to do, but that your commitment should not be to a particular accomplishment, but to faithfully living and pursuing those things, those goals, while pursuing Christ. And many, many things will be made clear in that as you do that. Okay, so one other thing, there is a chapter in the book, Yoo-Hoo, that is about this, but I wanted to try to tag this because it's just such a practical, this is just a real practical nuts and bolts Christianity kind of a thing to understand. And that is that obedience and faithfulness very, very seldom feel like big, glorious, world-changing endeavors. Okay, so what they typically feel like, just like what you talked about, what we just were talking about, you're like, it's gonna, whatever you do that will change the world is gonna be made up of small faithfulness. It's gonna be made up of small steps of obedience. It's not one big flashy thing. The Bible says to whom, nope, that was the wrong verse. I was gonna say the Bible says, he who is faithful. I keep wanting to say to whom much is given, much is required. But it's he who is faithful in a little will be faithful with much. That it's if you're faithfully doing little things, you will be faithful in the bigger things. And it's can't remember who said it. Everyone wants to change or save the world, but nobody wants to help mom with the dishes. It's this idea that I don't want to do this little boring, ordinary, self-sacrificing work. I just want to do some big thing that will make me famous for my self-sacrifice, rather than put a whole lifetime in of faithfulness. So I tell a story in the book about how I went to a conference. And when I was a teenager, my dad was speaking there, but I went and I was by myself across the country because even though Dad was speaking there, he was not staying. I was by myself attending the conference. He was staying somewhere else. And so as I was in the line, I think this is one of these weird moments where I actually can see what God did with something. I was in the line for the W's because my last name was Wilson, in the line to register. And I was feeling really like, this is not what I want to be doing. Thanks, Jake, for getting the verse out there correctly for me. I was feeling like I really don't want to be here. This is like, it's dumb to not know anyone. This was all like church groups that had come together, people who were friends already who were coming. There was like a lot of energy from everybody else, and I was by myself, just kind of not wishing I was there. And I remember having a little bit of a bad attitude and kind of like, well, this is dumb. I don't want to be here. And then I remember being convicted of it. I remember standing there in line and thinking, this is lame, Rachel. You shouldn't be like this. Get over yourself, stop being like this. And it wasn't a big deal. It was just something that I knew I felt convicted of a bad attitude, being a dud, whatever. And so I was like, all right, I obeyed this nudging of the Spirit that I needed to get over myself. And I interrupted the two girls who were standing in front of me in the line for W's, and I introduced myself. Well, in a very short amount of time, we were very good friends, and they were from Maryland. They ended up coming to Idaho to come to college with me. They were college friends. We lived together. They're still in town. There's probably, because the rest of their siblings ended up coming here, there's probably like 27 children alive today because of that little introduction. In the line there, they ended up here. They met husbands here. They married. They're raising children here, and all of this was from one little moment of me having a bad attitude, repenting, and getting over it. Now, God always is using our faithfulness, and we just almost always don't get to see it like that. We don't always get to see what he does with these things. But if I had gone to the same conference, if I had gone to stand in that line and say to myself, like, well, what can I do here? Like, I'm going to come here and I'm going to change the trajectory of a whole family. And I'm going to if I had come with the goal of what I was doing, and this never would have happened. But what happened was a small act of faithfulness that God used to do something really big, way beyond my own imagination, right? So what happened with it was much bigger than anything that I could have imagined. And it's so funny. And an even cooler part of that is that I found out much later that their mother had really wanted them to come, but she was like, there's no way. She knew she couldn't persuade them to come to Idaho or to even consider coming to Idaho. And that she had actually even been praying that there would be some way that they would consider looking into college in Idaho. And then there I was with my bad attitude answering her prayers in just such an interesting way. And so what I want to encourage you with is that every little bit of obedience, there's no such thing as obedience that God doesn't use for something. And he's using it. It's exponential. It's fruit. It's doing crazy things all the time. My husband often says that it's just the nature of fruitfulness, that fruit itself is just a vessel for seeds. It's always the fruit of obedience is also the planting of so much more things also. And so sometimes I just think it is important that you keep your eye on the bigger picture and think when you need to obey your parents, when you need to confess a little sin, when you need to put something right, you need to do something that seems like little, unimportant, boring obedience. Offer that to God, not just like, all right, fine, I have to do that, but say, Lord, do something with this obedience. Let me honor you with this obedience. Let this glorify you. And so there is a chapter in Yoo-Hoo that is called Planting Flags. And this is just a really practical way that I try to practice this. And that I think I would love for some of you to practice this also, which is just that when you're looking at a situation, whether it's a day, whether it's a moment where it's an afternoon of classes that you super don't want to go to, whether it is doing the thing your mom asked you to do, doing the dishes, or whether it's reaching out to a friend that you really don't want to hang out with, whatever thing it is, I like to think of planting flags. When you plant a flag in a new territory, it's a way of claiming all of it for whatever country it is that you're planting it there. So I often think about, you want to plant flags of obedience. You want to claim days in your life for Christ. You want to claim situations for Christ. You want to claim, you're like, this relationship, I want to claim this for Christ. Like, this is, Lord, honor your name in this, honor yourself in this obedience. And really intentionally between you and God, make it about you glorifying Him. And that is a wonderful way. It is just basic Christian practice, but it is a great way, especially for all of you who are young, to be developing that relationship with God where you are offering things to Him often and expecting responses, where you see His you know His pleasure in answering your prayers, and you see things happening. That is a really important part of your relationship to God. Okay, how do you get past desiring certain sins you see others, even other believers, indulging in? Wanting to be disenchanted with it, but knowing there's still ungodly desire within yourself. Yes, it would depend, I suppose, on what sin it is that you're really enchanted with, but the way that you get past it is, we were just talking about this, claiming it for Christ, saying like, Lord, I have this longing for that, but Lord, I believe you that this is not good. Like, show me, change my heart towards this. And I think it's important that you talk to your parents if there's something that you're really like, why am I attracted to this? Talk about it openly in that way. Like, why am I attracted to this? What is going on here? How can I understand better that this is not a desirable path? And I would say, just as a this is always a good admonition for Christians of all kinds, but to check your entertainment standards. That is a way that we can be always inputting into our minds, into our hearts, ideas about sin, things that we entertain this whole concept. We entertain some immoral narrative, and we are making friends with fools, even though they're fake, even though they're just stories. They can fill the role of a friend in your life, that you're being influenced by them. And so if there is something like that, you want to attack it on all fronts and make sure that you're not indulging in sort of fantasy desires about sin via watching a whatever it is, dumb movie, a bad show, if it is in songs, etc. Okay, it is also confusing when you see a good amount of your Christian friends indulging in an act that I know is wrong. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Are we talking about, give me an example of what you mean. Do you mean gossip? Is that what we're talking about? Or lying? slandering people. How much of a delay is there? This will take a minute.
5 seconds, 6, 7, 10 seconds.
Just wait. I'll pause. Can't really interact super fast here. Maybe they're going dark on me. Not gonna answer. Okay, so immodesty. You mean you have friends who are all practicing, you yourself are convicted that this is immodest. You have friends who are dressing immodestly, and you are having a hard time because you want to do that also. I would say this is something that women will be wrestling with. Most Christian women will be wrestling with this for a lot of their lives, is this real fundamental thing that is, men want to lust, women want to be lusted after. And that idea, actually, I have a good story about this. Okay, but you want to mortify that in yourself. Like you want to pray about it. You want to talk to your parents about it. You want to not be the person who's always judging them. And I know that bothered me a lot more than being the odd person out. It bothered me to have people acting like you were being the really prudish, uptight, judgmental person in the room. But I think I will tell you one thing that really struck me. There was a guy in Moscow who was very, he was like a fat older guy with horrible skin. And I had seen him around. He was a really unattractive person. And he was sitting on a bench on Main Street, wearing, for some reason, I know not why, a visor that was like an eerie yellow. So he was like a redhead with horrible skin, and then wearing so the light was shining through, making his whole face this terrible color. It was like a really momentous, like I remember seeing him and being like, wow, like that's amazing. And then this cute girl who was just dressed inappropriately, but not like shockingly inappropriately, walks by with her boyfriend holding his arm, and walks by, and I see this very gross man just staring at her rear end with his mouth wide open as she walks by. She's totally oblivious. And that moment, for some reason, because I was young, made a very big impact on me, because it was this realization that in the fantasy idea of being desired, it's never that guy that people are imagining really being interested in them. They're always thinking it would be an attractive guy. It'll be an attractive group of guys that will double take at how great I look in this. Instead, it's like the narrative is rewritten and romanticized anyways. But fundamentally, the immodesty is not about the men, it's not about other people, it's about your own walk with God. And if God told you to be modest, then fundamentally that relationship, it's obedience to God that needs to be, it's the immodesty is not that it's going to ruin things for other men, it's that it's actually bad for your heart. It's not good for you. And so it's something that I would say, you can indulge in that desire without being immodest. You can be wearing a full floor-length dress and still have the heart problem. So what I would say is just pray about it, offer it to God, ask him to make you wise in that, talk to your parents, just pursue dealing with the issue instead of just letting it brew forever. And maybe if you can schedule a chance to see a really, truly unattractive man staring at a girl, you'll have a moment of being like, great, goodness sakes. I remember just thinking, why would we assume that people like that would not go hang out at pools and beaches? It's like, of course they do. It's definitely the place that men like that are going to be. Okay, any other questions? I'll give you a minute. I'm sure there's got to be another question out there. Nothing?
No, you haven't asked yet.
You what?
You haven't asked yet.
I haven't even asked yet. Man, that's hard. It's hard to deal with these long pauses. Jake, don't you have any questions about... Come on, generate a question, guys.
Okay, you just asked.
Okay, so how much? Oh, I did just ask it, so now I have to wait. Man, I got to think of something to do in these times of waiting. Tell more stories. Might got to think of a good teenage story. Wait. Okay, I'll wait. I'm here. I'm waiting.
No, do a teenage story.
If I could think of one,
Yeah.
like racking my brains here for a good teenage story. I'm sure I have one. I have a good. This one is not really. Nope, not gonna tell that story. Too irrelevant. I'm gonna take us all off into the totally other topic of conversation. I like wait. ... I'm waiting.
You did just say that.
I will say, I'll talk a little more about modesty in the meantime. One of the biggest things I believe with immodesty is it's just not kind. It's not kind to anyone. It's not kind. It's just a way of not valuing other people. To want to indulge in that, like, I can wear whatever I want to wear and everyone else just needs to deal with it. It's just not a kind way of going about life. So, but it is actually it's usually a pretty hot topic with the teen girls. And the reason is because girls are just coming into this, they're just coming into an adult, that you're coming into an adult body. It's a time of discovery and they want to experiment with it. It is just a time when it's really even more important. It's kind of like you just got your driver's license. It's really important that you know the rules and that you follow the rules instead of you've reached a time in life when you can do serious damage with things that don't seem that serious to you. Yeah. All right. What if you read a book your friends have read that your parents did not want you to read? Then you just need to go make it right. So you need to go tell your parents, you need to confess it to God, and you need to tell your parents, and you need to, when you repent out of that sin, you have to go make it right with the people that need to know. So that's what I would say. Hustle off and do that, and ask them to talk more about it. Ask them to explain to you why they didn't want you to see it. Talk to them about it, but definitely go make it right. How do you talk to your Christian friends who don't care about if some things are wrong? Well, the big ticket there is that if you have a Christian friend who does not care if something is wrong, then you're talking about someone who is a professing Christian who is not willing to live like a Christian. And the summary of that is that they should not be your friend if that's going to be the way they are. Proverbs is full of admonitions about being careful about who are your friends. So one thing that we often tell our own kids is that your classmates are not your friends. It's like your coworkers. They are people you should be gracious to. They are people that you should be charitable to, but they are not automatically your friend just because they're in the same room as you often. So and the reason we say that is because Scripture is very clear that you should be wise about who are your friends. You need to be cautious about your friends, and you need to not be friends with fools. So if you have someone who's like absolutely couldn't care less what the Bible says about that, then what you have found out is that they are not friend candidates. And you should tell them why. You don't just drop. You should just say, I don't want to hang out with you if you don't care what God says about things. That's how it is. And you should be clear about that, not just cold shoulder them for no reason. But if they're genuinely like, oh, that's stupid, you're uptight that you would even bring this up, they may say they're a Christian, but they're not living like a Christian. Okay, when is it our place to confront our friends? I would say it is this is really a lot would depend on the magnitude of what we're talking about. But I would say the important thing that girls are really not good at, there's a number of things that girls are not good at. Confronting people is one of those things that girls are not super good at. So what I think is really important is that you must confront someone. Like, say someone is just gossiping to you. You can't just sit there and be like, or you are participating in it. So you need to push back on things. But what you need to do is draw a firm line and continue to love them, like love them right after it. So in high school, sometime I had a friend who was, I had a friend who would complain about her dad a lot. And I was just like, hey, I don't want to hear that. I just want you to know that I don't want to hear what you have to say about what you don't like about your dad, about rules or things that he, things that he told her she couldn't do something, and she would come complain to me about it. And I just drew that line, but then you say that's how it is, and then you can be just as loving towards them, just as friendly towards them. It was just a rule that I had to enforce on my end. So I had to say, we're not doing that together. So let's see. Okay, yes, certain movies that have, yes. So that's, if your friends don't care if they're watching bad things or whatever, then it's the same. That is pretty much what we already talked about. Okay, if you really enjoy a movie that is teaching wrong things, Incredibles 2. I don't feel like I've seen Incredibles 2 lately. What do you do? Okay, so what I would say is just don't be mindless about it, and don't continue. So, like, we'll let our kids watch shows. We have let them watch shows that we disagree with, like that there's principles in there that we disagree with. And it's different to say you can see it one time, you can think things are funny about it. But then we talk about what's wrong in this, and it's kind of like, this is never going to be our, this is not our thing. So an example of that was years ago when Frozen came out. As you all know, the Frozen soundtrack is very catchy. But we just were like, no, you're not going to sing that. No, because that is not the songs of our people is not let it go, or whatever. It was like, no, we don't, this is not going to become the soundtrack to our life because we don't believe these things. So basically, you want to evaluate, what is this saying? Is it true? And you want to be okay with discarding something if it's not of value. Okay. How do you stop from gossiping in front of you, not about you? Oh, how do you stop friends from gossiping? Okay, so I would just say you have to be pretty straightforward. There's two things. Girls need to learn how to say something clearly, like, hey, girls, knock it off. That's inappropriate. Or they also need to learn, when it's boys, when it's other people, you need to learn how to say no. The answer is no. Like what I have told my girls to say if people are gossiping is to say, I'm really not interested in that. And just say, I'm not interested. And if someone pursues you constantly doing that, the response gets shorter and shorter to just being, I'm not interested, turn away, walk away. Sometimes we have done the thing where if someone says, what do you think of so-and-so? And then they'll say, what do you think about people who are gossiping? Like, what do you think of that? Like, just give it right back to them in the sense of like, nope, I don't want to hear it. Don't listen to the whole thing and try to engage with it. Just say, no, we're not doing that. That's not how it's going to go. What lines do you draw when it comes to the music you listen to? Music is, I would say it's very similar to what I was saying about watching a movie or something, that if it is a really stupid, if it's just a really dumb song, then this is a pretty nuanced question. We would not listen to it and sing along with it all the time, or let it be the soundtrack to our life. Sometimes you might listen to a song and you're like, that's a beautiful song, but that's kind of a train wreck somewhere in there. So we would not listen to music that was full of profanity or that was overtly God-hating. There's a lot of, I would say, like country music. Well, all music, really, pop music now has a lot of immorality in it, but we just wouldn't listen to a song that is about immorality in a way that it's glorifying it. But then there are songs that are about immorality that's not glorifying it, that is that I don't have a problem with, like, what is it, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay? Isn't that one? It's about, isn't it? Is it? I'm like, guys, tell me, isn't it? It's all about I mean, that's a song that is touching on immorality, but it's not glorifying the immorality, and it's just a fun song. So, okay. Tell us about monkey feelings in chapter 20. Okay, didn't we talked some about this last week, about the thing that should never have authority over you is your own emotions. So, the idea in that chapter is that when you think that your essential self is locked up somewhere inside of you and that you need to release it, you need to pursue your own desires and follow your heart, that what we tend to start thinking is that our emotions is like a bulletin from the Holy of Holies. Like, it must be true if I'm feeling it. But the reality is that our emotions are not an authority like that. They're not revealing our essential selves, that even our emotions need to obey God, and we need to bring them to Him when they are being disobedient, when we are struggling with it. I think it was Pink, but I don't know who said that we should do a lot less listening to our heart and a lot more talking to it, like a lot more counseling yourself, like the psalmist does, like, my soul, why are you grieving? Why are you cast down? Hope in God. He's not saying, oh, my soul is cast down. What does that mean? Or, oh, I feel unloved, therefore that means I am unloved. When we take our emotions to indicate, and we're like, that must mean this is the truth. That's just a super muddled way to go about your life, because even our emotions should be, yes, not Pink the band. Isn't it Arthur Pink? But then I was even researching in my head if it really was Pink who said that. I'm not sure. While we were talking about music standards, it's nice that I bring up. You should intervene before this, guys, if that happens. All right. Okay, so I guess it's down to next week. If you have a question about body image, then go ahead and comment it. Oh, Jake just did that. Comment it on the next week, and we will try to cover it. Thank you all for coming. Have a good rest of your evening. It's off screen anyways. I don't know what's happening. We're just finishing with a bang here. I think I'm still live broadcasting, but all right. Thank you.
Are you done here or edit in studio? Just say done.
It's hot in here today.
I know.
It's like, oh.
Did we turn the air conditioning off?
Also, running through the rain